It's not out of the question that both have roles on our team in some kind of way.
Interesting comments from Nick Saban about the Tide's quarterback competition. It's a two-headed monster in Alabama's future, at least it looks that way. Plus, who did Coach Saban praise and who was he critical of in last Saturday's scrimmage? Those stories and much more right now on Tider Insider TV.
Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. Once again tonight, ice cold Diet Pepsi. I love that sound, almost as much as I love the way it tastes. Hey, Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. We're on the main set tonight. Kind of like this, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Got the big Tider Insider logo between us?
Yeah, and you know, you're talking about popping that. I get asked everywhere I go about you popping that lid, and people want to know, why does he do that?
I just like it.
There you go.
It's something I do on my own.
Yeah.
Pepsi hasn't told me I had to do it. I just like the way that sounds when it opens up ice and cold like that. But we're going to be discussing much more than soft drinks. We'll go in depth on the Tide scrimmage, the quarterback competition, and the very latest on receiver Deron Carter coming up. Will he ever practice with Alabama? But first, the scandal at Miami has touched Tuscaloosa. Two members of Nick Saban's current staff, offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland and football operations director Joe Panunzio, were on the Hurricane staff and mentioned in a Yahoo Sports report that detailed numerous alleged NCAA violations against Miami. Now, Thursday following practice, head coach Nick Saban said he would address the situation one time and one time only.
I'm going to address this, and I know that, you know, sometimes you all don't understand, for people who are in the communication business, basic English. I'm going to address this, and that's it. Okay, all this stuff about Miami, I know nothing about Miami. I don't have time to deal with what's going on in Miami. I know what goes on in this program, and I know that we do things correctly. We do have people in this organization who work there. Before those people ever were hired here, we do an NCAA check to make sure that they pass all compliance criteria and don't have any red flags relative to compliance history. And we certainly did that in both of these cases. Now, if any of these people had any wrongdoing, I'm sure the NCAA will investigate it in due time, and if they did anything wrong, I'm sure they'll get the appropriate punishment, which we would do if we had any internal problems in our organization. But we're going to continue to control and manage and monitor what we do in our organization and do it correctly, and that's basically all we can be concerned about.
And Rodney, I think Coach Saban did a great job of pretty much summing that situation up, but we get asked about it a lot. We went in depth on it on our radio show last Wednesday night, and a couple things that we wanted to clear up then that I'm gonna let you speak on. First of all, we got called up several times on a radio show and asked, you know, what about this Alabama situation with these coaches? It's not an Alabama situation. It's a Miami situation. If they had wrongdoing at Miami, it cannot follow to the University of Alabama. Alabama is not responsible for anything that happened at Miami. Yes, down the road, as you heard Coach Saban say, if they were found to have had wrongdoing, it could affect their status going forward. But this isn't an Alabama issue at all. Let's clear that up one more time.
Absolutely not, and we've talked about that. And again, it's just a matter of going through the process, Gary, and finding out the facts, distinguishing the facts from fiction. And again, we are talking about a guy who provided the information, who is a felon in prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, these are allegations at this point, and both their names did come up in that Yahoo Sports report, but the NCAA is conducting its own investigation, and time will answer all of these questions that people have regarding Jeff Stoutland and Joe Panunzio. But for the short term, they're coaches at the University of Alabama, and we certainly expect them to remain coaches at least through this season, for sure, if not longer.
And to be honest with you, Gary, and you know this, Jeff Stoutland has a impeccable record.
Right.
I mean, you talk to people down in Miami, you talk to former players, they say he's white as a sheet in terms of, you know, how clean he is with recruiting and all those things. Joe Panunzio has been around. He's a veteran coach. He worked for Tommy Tuberville. He worked at Auburn. He's been at Ole Miss. So, you know, he's certainly been in a lot of places, too, and established a track record.
And as Coach Saban said, both were cleared by the NCAA before coming to Alabama. The university did its due diligence, and as you and I know, the compliance department at Alabama does its due diligence on every matter. So there's no doubt that they got a clean bill of health before they were hired. Okay, let's move on to on-the-field matters. Alabama held its second scrimmage of the fall camp on Saturday. Both quarterbacks, A.J. McCarron and Phillip Sims, worked with both the ones and the twos. Stats, again, for quarterbacks not released. And Coach says the ultimate decision of who plays will be based more on mental discipline rather than physical ability. But that's assuming there is actually a decision made between the two.
These two guys are probably a couple of the best players on our team. And, you know, it's not out of the question that both have roles on our team in some kind of way. Both of them have consistently made plays. Their decision-making, their judgment, their ability not to force things and take what the defense gives and distribute the ball with good decision-making, down in, down out, is, you know, probably the only thing that's going to be any different about them, because it's not physical ability or talent.
All right, Mr. Tider Insider, how many times do you ask about the quarterback situation on your board today? I know it's a lot because I read the Post, and everybody wants an answer, but really, as Coach just said, there is no answer to be given at this time.
Well, and there's not, and we've, you know, Gary, we've talked about it since how long? Back in the spring on this show, and, you know, we kind of summed it up then by saying that we expected both of them to play early and see how it all shook out. It may be a situation where there's a rotation throughout the year. Maybe one of the guys eventually, you know, takes the spot. But again, both of they're so close. And again, you look at Phillip Sims, people say, what are some of the differences? Well, you know, they both have strong arms, as Nick Saban said. They both do things really well in terms of when they're flushed out of the pocket. They throw on the run. They've both shown good leadership skills. You know, sometimes, Gary, it comes down to the guy who makes the least amount of mistakes. And again, that's going to be determined.
All right, let me ask you this. Don't you think Nick Saban's one of the best coaches in the country?
I do.
A lot of these analysts that are on television have never coached a game. You and I have never coached. The next game we coach will be our first. Now, if he decides on a starting quarterback, I think he'll do that because he thinks it's the best thing. If he plays two quarterbacks, don't you think whatever decision he makes, he's making it based on the best interest of the football team? So who says two can't work? I don't know. But I'm just saying if he plays two, I think you and I would agree it's because he thinks it gives the team the best chance to win.
Well, I get a sense, Gary, you know, just seeing from the interviews with Phillip and talking to some people and also with AJ, that both of them have bought into the team concept. I mean, they feel like if it works well for the team, they're certainly open to doing that. And, you know, I don't see where, as long as it's not a problem with them and the chemistry is okay with the team, I don't see where it's an issue.
He may very well name a starting quarterback, and will name some type of starting quarterback, but if both quarterbacks play, I can assure you, as we've stated, it's because he thinks it's best for the team. And the people that are making a lot of decisions on what they think is best aren't at practice every day. All right, here's some stats that were released from the scrimmage. Eddie Lacy accounted for 57 yards on 7 carries with a touchdown. I mean, this guy's a bull, and he seems like he's learned to hold on to the football. Teammate Trent Richardson, 39 yards on 7 carries. On defense, safety Mark Barron, 6 tackles, 1 pick, 1 sack, 3 pass breakups, and a block kick. Maybe he took some snaps at quarterback. He did everything else. You see Hightower's numbers. Upshaw's a beast up front. Mosley is a tackling machine. Rodney, this defense has a lot of talent. Now, as far as the overall scrimmage assessment from Nick Saban, here it is now.
If I would say there's one thing that I would want to make a big improvement in, it is, you know, how our second units actually competed and played and executed, and you know, I think they can be a lot better than they were.
And they probably can improve, Rodney, but let's keep this in mind. The second units are having to go up against that first unit, particularly the second unit offense operating against that first defense. I mean, this is a defense that is talented and deep at every position.
Oh, no question about it. We've talked about that, the returning experience, Gary. And, you know, the guys up front, I think, you know, when you start looking at things as you assess this scrimmage, not only on the defensive side, but, you know, one thing that Nick Saban wanted to see, I think, in this scrimmage was the offense run the ball a little bit better, make a concerted effort at that, and they did that. Obviously, Eddie Lacy and Trent Richardson had some good, picked up good yardage, and they ran the ball a lot better than they did in the first scrimmage, which, again, I think that was some sort of an issue there. But, you know, when you look at the offensive line, still they're kind of getting settled in. Barrett Jones, let's remember, he just moved to left tackle towards the end of spring practice. Cyrus Kwanjo's a guy that's, you know, making some noise at left tackle. Possibly, you know, he could be a guy that maybe slips into that spot. We'll see how that develops.
Well, speaking of Barrett Jones, still to come on Titv tonight. I guess I just gave it away. We'll talk about Bama's Mr. Versatility across that offensive front. Plus, the latest on the Duron Carter watch, and why is Alabama's first opponent not talking about the Tide? But up next, charges have been filed in relation to the death of Crimson Tide offensive lineman Aaron Douglas. We'll tell you who police are holding accountable for his death next and Tider Insider TV. Also tonight, we're not going to be able to take phone calls this evening, but we will answer your email questions. You can drop us a line, TITV@WVUATV.com. Stay tuned. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only award-winning Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV. Rodney Orr will rejoin me in a few minutes. First, though, a cab driver has been charged with manslaughter and the death of an Alabama football player who died after taking drugs. Fernandina Beach, Florida police say in a news release that Rodney Young Odom was arrested late Monday and charged with manslaughter and the sale and delivery of a controlled substance. An autopsy report found the Crimson Tide offensive lineman Aaron Douglas died May the 12th as a result of multiple drugs found in his system. Police Chief James Hurley says that Douglas rode to a party in a cab driven by Odom, who either sold or gave him 2 prescription methadone pills during the trip. Odom was jailed on $50,000 bond. And authorities say former NFL player and University of Alabama star Antoine Odom was shot in the thigh by a gunman. Mobile County Sheriff's Department spokeswoman Lori Miles says deputies were called to Odom's house around 4:30 a.m. Monday morning in Irvington, Alabama. This man, Tony Gildersleeve, has been arrested in connection with the shooting. Deputies say they believe Gildersleeve entered the house through an unlocked door, went into Odom's bedroom, and fired 2 shots with a shotgun.
We're pursuing an attempted murder charge against the suspect. Anytime you shoot somebody with a shotgun, it's, the worst of intentions.
Good news is Odom is expected to fully recover from his gunshot wounds. Well, coming up, there was a Carter at practice last week, just not Duran. We'll have that story, plus the very latest on when the junior college transfer might show up at practice. Also ahead, he's the Tide's utility man. We'll discuss the versatile Barrett Jones when Tider Insider TV rolls on WVUA TV. Stay with us. Welcome back to TITV alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. You know, baseball teams pride themselves on having a utility guy, a guy that can plug in at just about any position to do a number of different things. You don't usually find that on the offensive line of a football team, Rodney, but Nick Saban has indicated that veteran offensive lineman Barrett Jones will play that role for the Tide. Rodney, let's talk about how hard it is to learn one offensive line
Absolutely.
position. To play all 3 and do it well, I mean, how special is this guy?
Well, there's no question about it, Gary. It shows not only his athletic ability, but how about his intelligence? You know, again, I can't speak for what would happen if William Vallejos, for instance, missed time at center, if Kellen Williams would step in. But there wouldn't be a possibility that Barrett Jones would move from whether he's at left tackle or right guard into that spot to be the number 2 center, because he might be the most dependable guy at that spot behind Vallejos. So, it's just incredible what he can do from a versatility standpoint.
You know, we don't know if we'll see him at center because unless, like you said, something were to happen to Vallejos, he's the man pretty much there. But I do think it's a pretty good guess that he's going to play both tackle and guard in different situations this year.
It's a possibility. It depends, I guess, on how Cyrus Kwanjo comes around. But, when you look at it, Gary, and we talk about all these things about his versatility, his intelligence, what a leader he is. Let's be honest. He's probably the leader of the offense right now. He and, of course, Trent Richardson. But, he's a great leader, not only for the offense, but for the team. And
think about this, Rodney. I think most people think he's a senior because academically he's already graduated. But he is a redshirt junior. Yeah. He's been around here a while. He has the opportunity, if he wants to come back next year.
Yeah, and certainly, that's going to be something that's going to be an interesting story to follow as time goes on.
Yeah, it will be, because he probably is NFL ready right now, but he is a great football player and working on a graduate degree already. All right, there has been a Carter at practice at Alabama recently. Don't get too excited. Former NFL great Chris Carter has been seen at the Tide's workouts a few times. He is Duran Carter's dad, but Duran, though, still on hold. Rodney, any updates there?
No. In fact, we'll have to see. I think Nick Saban said tonight, following post-practice, John came in and told us that obviously Duran still has time to get on the field.
Yeah, actually, you can still register and enter and get in classes as late as the 31st of August. So classes start tomorrow, but there's still several days that if he gets cleared, that he can enroll, then get on the practice field. Of course, now he's going to be behind from a football standpoint.
And not only that, he has to start 2 days in practice.
Shorts, right.
Shorts, yeah.
While they're working full speed. So he's behind there, but I still think Alabama would like to have him out there on the practice field. So if he gets cleared to enroll, look for him to join the football team immediately. Well, Alabama opens the season a week from this coming Saturday. Can you believe it? They'll host Kent State. And there was an interesting article in today's Tuscaloosa News sports section. New coach Darrell Hazel is quoted as saying that he's forbidden his players to talk about the Crimson Tide during the first 3 weeks of camp. Obviously, Rodney, it's because it's focus for them. He wants to be on getting better and doing what they need to do to focus on themselves. But still, you know, they know Alabama's looming out there. What do you think about this approach?
That's interesting. You know, Penn State last year spent all their spring and all their offseason focusing on Alabama, talking to the players about Alabama, talking about how brutal it would be to come down here and play against Alabama. And I think everything their players did, they said, that won't be good enough against Alabama. And then, you know, but you understand.
I do. I tell you what I'm thinking about. You know, this is a program that hasn't won a conference championship since Nick Saban was a player there at Kent State. I think what he wants them to do is use this game as a learning tool, not get too high or too down either way, and then use it to help them compete in their league. Because I really think he believes they've got a chance to win their league. And if you focus on Alabama and then you come down here and, like you said, just get stomped, which I'm not saying that will happen, but if it did, it might take the win right out of yourselves.
Well, let's be honest, though. When they step on the field, Bryant-Denny Stadium, and 101,000, I mean, they're Kent State, and again, it's taking nothing away from them, but I think you know what their response is going to be. They're going to be intimidated.
Yeah. Well, I think he's taking the right approach. Don't focus too much on Alabama. It's a big picture for them. Use this game to get better. Well, the Associated Press Top 25 poll was released over the weekend, and Alabama finds themselves near the top, just not quite at the top. Oklahoma is number 1, but Alabama starts out number 2. And if you look back in history, Alabama's actually done better in years they started out at number 2 versus number 1. Alabama and the Tide won a record 8 SEC teams in the top 25. Bama plays 2 of them in Tuscaloosa, 3 of them on the road. You know, Rodney, on paper, this is the toughest SEC that we've seen in recent years based on top 25 polls. I mean, it is just a murderer's row. I tell you, though, I like being ranked high from an Alabama perspective. I don't care what anybody says. If you're good enough, you'll under the pressure. It's a lot easier to be ranked high than have to work your way through the pack. I know Auburn did it last year, but let's be honest. If Alabama wins all their games, they're playing in the national championship game. It's guaranteed.
Well, you look back, and you mentioned about Alabama doing better when they were ranked number 2. You remember 1979? I know I'm going back a long way. They were ranked number 2, opened the season. Number 2 to Southern Cal was number 1, and Alabama eventually won the national championship. Southern Cal had a lot of pressure on them, as you mentioned, Gary. That's supposed to be one of the greatest teams of all time. Didn't quite live up to that. But anyway, I think you're right. I agree with you, and I think Alabama's in a good position. And you talk about the competition in the SEC. What about just the West alone?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about Arkansas, LSU, certainly Auburn, the defending national champions. And I think Mississippi State, I've said all along, I think that's going to be a game that's going to be very difficult for Alabama as if you want to project ahead from where we are now. You look at that game and you say, hey, Alabama's coming off that game of the century type thing with LSU. And then they've got to go to Starkville and play Mississippi State. And I think Dan Mullen's doing a great job with that program.
It's a daunting schedule as always in the SEC, but I look at it like this. Those teams also have to play Alabama. Alabama has to play them, but they got to play Alabama, and it's going to be a tough task to take the Tide down. Well, as I said, no phone calls this week, but we can answer some emails. If you want to email us, titv@wvoatv.com. We'll get to that and more when Tider Insider TV rolls on this Tuesday evening. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV. Cannot take phone calls tonight. We've got a technical issue, but we can get to some emails. And let's take one right now. This one is from Ray in Glencoe. What are the chances that freshman Haseen Clinton-Dix from Florida will start this year?
Wow.
That's pretty optimistic. He's going to play some, though.
Yeah. I mean, he's a talented kid. There's no question about that. Has a bright future. I think that clearly he's everything that he was built up to be, at least athletically. But, you know, when you're talking about Robert Lester, you're talking about Mark Barron, you're talking about Jarek Williams, you're talking about Nick Perry, Lowry. I mean, you've got a lot of guys back there. Will Lowry, you've got a lot of guys back there with experience that have played. I mean, it's going to be tough. But I think he's going to play. How much, I don't know. Certainly, I think he could be a part of the special teams.
You know, he's probably talented enough to start, but like you said, when you got Lester and Barron in front of you, you're not going to beat out 2 All-SEC guys as a true freshman. It's a compliment to him, though, that he's probably going to get into the playing rotation.
But let's say this. You're talking about a freshman that may play at the safety spot, Vinny Sinceri.
Yeah,
you know, and again, let's keep in mind, though, Vinny came in the spring. How valuable is that? It gives him an opportunity to get acclimated and learn the system, and I think it helped him out dramatically.
All right, let's take another email. This is from Chris in Tuscaloosa. Guys, what is your assessment of the basketball schedule? Is it more difficult than in years past? Well, I mean, it depends on how many years you want to go back. I think in the last few years, yes. I mean, you're talking about Virginia Commonwealth, a Final Four team. You're talking about several NCAA tournament teams, plus several marquee teams like Oklahoma State, Georgetown that are on the schedule. So it's a tough schedule, but Alabama's got a better basketball team than they've had the last few years, too. So I think they'll be up to the task. Well, stick around. Former Crimson Tide football players continue to shine in the NFL preseason. We'll have that story when Tider Insider Television continues. Welcome back to Titv. You know, Rodney, Alabama had 4 #1 draft picks this past spring in the NFL draft, plus Greg McElroy drafted by the Jets in the 7th round. Tell you, all these guys making an impact. We're going to look at some video. Marcel Darius, I tell you, this guy is a animal. Look at number 99, of course, we're 57 at Alabama. All these guys are living up to their expectations, and you got McElroy as a 7th round pick. Joe Namath tweeted about him the other day, how impressed he was with McElroy. It's obvious what type of talent Nick Saban can bring.
None of this is surprising, to be honest with you, Gary, because Nick Saban, what he does is prepare guys for the NFL. I mean, I think when they step up, it's not as significant of a step up as it is maybe for some other guys.
Good luck to all these guys, and we're going to be hearing their names a lot on National Football League telecast this coming season as we take a look at Julio Jones right there. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's program. It's dinner time. Buddy's Rib and Steak in Northport. We'll see you there about 7:15. Come join us. Also, don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can catch it on our website, WVUATV.com, and also Rodney and I's radio show tomorrow night, Tider Insider Radio on the Tider Insider Radio Network from 7 to 9, various stations across the state, or you can listen to it live streaming at 977.com. tomorrow night. So for Rodney Orr, our director Jen Hamner, our producer John Huddleston, and our entire TITV staff, I'm Gary Harris wishing you well. We'll see you next week on Tider Insider TV.